Can you imagine if SpongeBob had never left the abyss? What would have happened? Was he going to physically mutate to adapt? Well, basically it would be like moving from Veracruz to Iztapalapa. Well friends, today we bring you a really crazy theory about what would happen to SpongeBob if he hadn't been able to escape the abyss. First of all, forget about Krabby Patties. Why wouldn't this SpongeBob be cooking for Mr. Krabs? We're possibly talking about a SpongeBob who ends up selling drugs, or even worse, becomes a thug and only listens to gangster music. Radio a myth? Nah, but seriously now guys, the simple fact that SpongeBob got trapped in such a dark and deep place would literally make SpongeBob mutate his body physically and mentally to adapt and survive. Haven't you ever thought about it? Here, there are only strange animals with exotic colors and impressive sizes, so what would SpongeBob look like? Well, before we get to this physical change, let's find out what his friends from Bikini Bottom would do if they found out that Bob didn't come back from his trip to the surface. Glove. Let's start with the useless Patrick, who was basically the last person to be with Bob before he disappeared. What would Patrick do when they ask him about Bob? Nothing. I mean, Patrick wouldn't even notice if Bob was kidnapped, thrown into the cement, or disappeared into a black hole. Patrick is as lost as ever, so the only thing he would do is make his usual face of... Then comes Squidward. Now, that's where things change, and not the way you think. If you thought Squidward was going to be happy forever. No, honestly, you've disappointed me, my friend. The thing is, through several episodes, Squidward has shown that deep down in his dry and crusty heart, he cares about SpongeBob. Actually, he sees him as one of his few friends. And I'm sure that as soon as he realizes that day after day SpongeBob's presence is gone, he's gonna feel an emptiness in his stomach, just like we saw in the Tentacle Acres episode. Now let's talk about Sandy. If Bob is lucky enough to get lost in any season other than winter, there's a good chance he would have been rescued quickly. Otherwise... And finally, Mr. Krabs. And as we know, this bastard would only make a move if it benefits him. Most likely, the people who used to go to the Krusty Krab would stop going because of the lack of quality in the food. The only cook left would be Squidward, who of course makes burgers that taste like socks.
With poop.
Which would make the profits of this greedy crab go down the drain. With this, Mr. Krabs would immediately have to look for SpongeBob so he alone could bring the whole business back up. Because if his damn working machine gets away, he has to go rescue him. And now we get to the physical and mental changes that SpongeBob would experience from being exposed to the abyss. And so that we can know exactly what would happen to SpongeBob. There's a very interesting theory that probably hadn't crossed many of your minds. What's up with this red fish at the end of the episode? How come he was the only one who understood SpongeBob without having to speak in the abyss fart language? Don't you think maybe he was a Bikini Bottom resident and the same thing happened to him as to Bob and Patrick? Did he also take the wrong bus and get stuck here? This fish seems to be a normal Bikini Bottom fish, only now with mutations from having adapted to this new ecosystem. That's probably why he knew that the only way to escape from this horrible place was with the balloon that SpongeBob had. Maybe he couldn't take the bus back either and got stuck here. Which tells us that SpongeBob's body would have to adapt to this new environment and ecosystem. In real life, sea sponges can live without any problem in many parts of the ocean. So SpongeBob wouldn't die like a little girl. In fact, he would be much tougher and really gutsy. Goodbye to the little one's hut. SpongeBob's skin would have to get really tough to withstand the high underwater pressure, but really tough, like pig skin. And what other changes do you think Bob would have? Just take a look at the kinds of strange animals that exist in the abyss. The fish in the abyss are very resistant to these strong water pressures. They have highly developed senses to be able to survive and navigate through those dark places. There are other fish that have highly developed eyes to be able to see in the dark. And of course, what really sets these fish apart is that some of them glow or have very striking colors to attract their prey. Like the little light my friend the Diablo fish has. But actually, I think SpongeBob, besides having tougher skin, his color wouldn't be yellow anymore, but rather a darker color to blend in with the environment and not end up as prey for some predator. He definitely won't be eating what he always ate in Bikini Bottom anymore. Most likely Bob will now feed on the fossils he finds around there. And I'm not the one saying this, it's National Geographic itself. So you can see that I'm not just making up nonsense. His voice would be deeper and he would speak with difficulty. Not with farts, I mean it would be hard for him to talk. Do you guys know about those problems that people from the Abyss have? Besides, Bob wouldn't be as cheerful and crazy as he was in Bikini Bottom anymore. This would make him a very easy prey for the bigger fish. He would possibly become more serious and introverted now. He might also have a cold personality. I imagine him as someone like SpongeBob, who only focused on surviving. He would probably find few friends or at least people to hang out with day after day. Actually, we don't even know what he was going to do here since we know very little about this place. There is civilization here, they had a bus station. They might also have places to eat or restaurants, or who knows, maybe the restaurant itself was the whole Abyss, maybe all along. Those same fish might be eating each other to survive. The only other reference we have to this place was in the SpongeBob movie with its first song, I'm a Goofy Goober Man. And here all the fish were eating each other well, fast and crazy. How the hell was Bob supposed to survive this? Well, we've already seen that he has his skin, his camouflage, and he was probably just going to be eating fossils. Life in the Abyss really is pure torment. Would Bob really survive here? Well, I say yes. He's very fast and slippery in case anyone tries to catch him. Besides, according to him, he can survive just by eating air, although this hasn't really been confirmed. The problem will be when they finally rescue him or remember that he exists. If they take him out of the Abyss too quickly, his new body might not handle it and SpongeBob could explode. That's why when deep sea divers come up to the surface, they have to be put in compression chambers so they don't suffer any fatal effects on their bodies. And the same thing happens with fish. But now that I think about it, this wouldn't be much of a problem, since we've often seen them explode or even break apart. The cube in pieces, and even so, they put it back together, and it kept going as if nothing happened. Little by little, his skin will start getting some color thanks to the Bikini Bottom sun. And I think that in no time he was going to remember how to talk in a normal way. And thanks to the help of his super friend Patrick, who was the first to go help him, Bob was going to become a total goofball again. Anyway, the conclusion is that wherever he is, SpongeBob will be able to adapt to survive and be practically an invincible being. Unless you dry him out completely with a lamp, like in the movie. Until you spill your glass of Coke on him and he comes back to life. Wow, he really is powerful. SpongeBob, but what do you think, friends? What other changes and mutations do you think would have happened to SpongeBob if he hadn't escaped from the Abyss? We'll be reading your comments.